Welcome to meeting number 42 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights, pursuant to order of reference of November 17th, 2022. This committee is meeting to begin a study on supplementary estimates B 2022 to 2023 of the Department of Justice, and pursuant to the order of reference of November 23rd, 2022, we will proceed later today to the study of Bill C-291, an act to amend the criminal code and to make consequential amendments to other acts, child sexual abuse material. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, and the House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Members are attending in person and in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments on the benefit of the witnesses and the members. Please wait till I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage this speaking order as best as we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. For the first hour of this meeting, we will just make sure we'll now proceed to supplementary estimates 2022 to 2023 for the following items. Under the Canadian Human Vote 1B will end up being under the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Vote 1B under Courts Administration Service. Votes 1B and 5B under the Department of Justice. Vote 1B under Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and Vote 1B under Registrar of the Supreme Court of Canada. To present those items, we have with us the Honourable David Lametti, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Welcome, Minister. I'd also like to welcome François Deguel, Deputy Minister of Justice and Deputy Attorney General of Canada, Michael Sousa, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy Sector, and Bill Kroll, Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister of the Management Sector. So now I'll give the floor to Minister Lametti to give his statement, and then we'll go for a round of questions.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to be here with you today for your study of the Supplementary Estimates B 2022-2023. And I would like to begin by recognizing that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people.
As you've said, Mr. Chair, by François Deg, Deputy Minister of Justice and Deputy Attorney General of Canada, Michael Sousa, the Senior Deputy Minister of the Policy Sector, and Bill Kroll, who is our Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister, and I thank the three of them for being in support of me today. Over
the past year, the Department of Justice of Canada has continued its work to address the significant pressures on our justice system. We've made good progress in the post-pandemic health recovery. We have reduced the backlog of cases that are in the courts, and we've strengthened our justice system to better support those most affected. We hope to be able to continue this work through Bill S-4, which is now before you.
Continuing to support government-wide priorities such as addressing inequality, systemic racism and discrimination, advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and assisting newcomers to Canada and refugees. The funds we seek in the 2022-2023 Supplementary Estimates B will allow us to build on this work by delivering on key commitments to transform our justice system and make sure that it truly focuses on the people that it serves. This
includes ensuring that our justice system is accessible and fair to all people in Canada, regardless of their background, income, beliefs, or gender identity. This work is linked to our overarching goal of addressing systemic discrimination and the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples and members of Black, racialized, and marginalized communities in the criminal justice system. We took an important step this year by passing Bill C-5, which includes many reforms that will make our justice system more fair and more equitable.
Continuing our work together with Indigenous peoples to achieve the objectives of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and make progress towards reconciliation. Let me explain how the supplementary estimates funds will allow us to deliver on these priorities. First, access to justice is a fundamental Canadian value and an integral part of a fair and just society. A strong legal aid system is one of the pillars that supports Canada's justice system. Nous continuons à faire des
We're continuing to make investments to address the pressures on legal aid and to ensure the ongoing provision of legal aid in immigration and refugee matters. This investment is critical. Without it, some legal aid providers might be forced to withdraw their services that vulnerable claimants really depend on.
Without proper resources and services, we would see delays at the Immigration and Refugee Board and the Federal Court. This, in turn, would hinder government investments aimed at improving the asylum system the asylum system's processing capacity. This funding feeds into the Department's work to fulfill the Government of Canada's commitment to address systemic racism in Canada. The supplementary estimates B also include funding to support our efforts to address the overrepresentation of Indigenous people, Black and racialized Canadians, and members of marginalized communities in our justice system. As mentioned, this funding complements our work in other areas, including law reform, improving the diversity of judicial appointments, and my mandate commitments to develop an Indigenous justice strategy and Canada's first Black justice strategy. The opioid crisis has laid bare the need for public health solutions to substance abuse, rather than criminal penalties. Nous avons constaté
We've seen a growing demand across the country for drug treatment programs overseen by the drug courts. To help meet this need, Budget 2021 announced $40.4 million over 5 years, starting in 2021-22, and $10 million ongoing for the Department of Justice and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. This funding includes $24.5 million over 5 years, beginning this year, and $7 million ongoing in contribution funding for the Department of Justice.
Will work to support justice for all. This brings me to our efforts to advance reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, which is central to so much of my mandate.
One key element of reconciliation is ensuring the effective implementation of the United Nations declarations on the right of Indigenous peoples, or that act, the UNDRIP Act, in consultation and collaboration with Indigenous peoples. We're currently undertaking a comprehensive distinctions-based engagement process with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to develop an action plan by June 2023.
With Indigenous peoples on an Indigenous justice strategy. This past year, our government appointed a special interlocutor for missing children and unmarked graves and burial sites associated with Indian residential schools, Ms. Kimberly Murray. The special interlocutor will work closely and collaboratively with Indigenous leaders, communities, survivors, families, and experts to identify needed measures and recommend a new federal legal framework to ensure the respectful and culturally appropriate treatment and protection of unmarked graves and burial sites of former children at former residential schools. We are also supporting Indigenous Services Canada and Crown and Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada in their work to implement an act respecting First Nations, Inuit and Métis children, youth and families, which came into force on January 1st, 2020.
In this context, Justice Canada is requesting $510,000 in the supplementary estimates B to increase our capacity to provide expert legal advice on matters related to the interpretation and implementation of Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. We anticipate that these additional resources will be essential over the next 5 years, given the national scope of the legal issues, the breadth of their implications, and their novelty. Mr. Chair, in conclusion, Supplementary Estimates B will enable the Department of Justice to continue to play a vital role in creating a strong, fair, and effective justice system that protects Canadians, their communities, and their rights.
I am now happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lametti. Now we'll go to our first round of questions, beginning with a round for 6 minutes, beginning with Mr. Moore.
Okay, thank you, Minister Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today, as well as to your officials. A few questions. We're seeing a kind of rip from the headlines as of late. You were here before at this committee on Bill C-7 discussing medical assistance in dying. And as you know, the bill that you had brought forward was amended at the Senate to include those suffering with mental illness. And as of March 17th, 2023, those individuals will be eligible for MAID. Now, this was an amendment that, quite frankly, surprised those of us at this committee, I think from all sides, because this was considered under Bill C-7, and yourself, when you brought testimony, said that in February 2021, you do not believe that we are fully prepared to safely proceed with the provision of MAID on the grounds of mental illness alone. Now we see in the headlines multiple instances now, very disturbing, of individuals that have served our country in the Canadian Armed Forces, veterans, being offered medical assistance in dying when they reach out for help, perhaps with a post-traumatic stress disorder or some other challenge that they're facing. Canadians are shocked and alarmed by this. And my question to you, Minister, we know that the RCMP is getting involved in this. Clearly, under our current system, vulnerable Canadians are not being sufficiently protected when it comes to medical assistance in dying. In light of this looming deadline of March 17th, 2023, when MAID will be further expanded, are you willing to put the brakes on that expansion until clearly we get some guidelines in place that protect vulnerable Canadians, not only members of the Canadian Armed Forces and veterans, but all vulnerable Canadians suffering with mental illness?
Thank you, Mr. Moore. That's an important question, and you and I have both been through the committee process on C-7. I appreciate the work that we've all done on that. Let me first of all say that if you're suffering from a mental disorder, there is help. People should reach out for help, and that is critically important to underline at the outset. The MAID regime contains within it, the current MAID regime contains within it balances. So those reports are troubling to me. It is up to the medical profession to ensure that those standards are met. And it's up to the medical profession to underline that MAID is about individual choice for people who qualify under the criteria that are there, and that's something that needs to be underlined, because it seems that in some of the reports that has been downplayed. And I underscore that when those criteria are not met and the regime has not been followed, there's a criminal act there. And then it's up to police to investigate. A great deal of work has been done on mental illness since I made that statement in 2021. The expert committee has come up with a report and a set of guidelines. A great deal of work has been done at the federal level and at the provincial level to ensure that for the vast minority, and I underscore that minority of cases, where according to those guidelines that are being developed through the expert committee, someone might be eligible for MAID solely with the condition of mental disorder, those safeguards will be in place. I understand the concerns, and I understand the concerns with change. I'm committed to continue to work with all of you to improve those standards as we move forward, to improve the communication of those standards so that we have clarity, and to work with provinces to ensure that they have the appropriate supports in place to make these provisions operational.
All right, thank you, Minister. I guess I think the challenge Canadians are seeing here is, by and large, healthcare within our country is controlled by the individual provinces. We've heard warnings, even as recently, Minister, the Association of Chairs of Psychiatry in Canada has called for your government to delay the expansion of MAID for those suffering from mental illness. They've issued a letter saying further time is required to increase awareness of this change and establish guidelines on and standards to which patients and the public can turn to for more education and information, as well as doctors. And here's the concern. At the federal level, these changes are being brought in to our criminal code. We're saying that enough work has happened when so clearly even our own House, these were federal employees of the Department of Veterans Affairs who were offering MAID to veterans. This is a case where not only are the provinces not ready for this, not only are professionals not ready, according to the Association of Chairs of Psychiatry, but the federal government itself doesn't seem to know what it's doing when we have seemingly random people offering assisted death to struggling veterans. So between now, this is December, March is quickly approaching. This government, this entire regime is not ready. So, Minister, I guess my plea to you on behalf of many Canadians who are calling out, including doctors and those suffering with mental illness, the disability community, they're saying put the brakes on this, and I would urge you to strongly consider that.
Very quickly, Minister, 10 seconds.
Thanks, Mr. Moore. I appreciate that question. Comes from a very good place. We have put a great deal of resources into the system, but we will continue to monitor your concerns, the concerns that are being raised by Canadians in a variety of different professional spheres, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. We'll now go to Ms. Dillon for 6 minutes.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you for being with us this morning. And thank you to your team as well. My first question will be about Bill C-5. It received royal assent on November 17th, 2022. Could you tell us how this bill will ensure that Canadians are treated fairly and equitably within our criminal justice system? Thank you.
Merci, Madame Dillon.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Dillon. You know, I believe C-5 is a historic bill. And it will really change our approach to crime. And I'm talking about nonviolent crimes. I'm talking about offenses where, you know, public safety is not in danger. So this will really allow us to tackle the problem of overrepresentation of Black, racialized, and Indigenous people within the criminal justice system, while giving more flexibility and discretion to judges at the time of sentencing. And it will allow them to better decide on a proportional and fair sentence. It will also allow us to use different types of sentences, like rehabilitation, for example. You know, in BC, we made investments in a rehabilitation center and a community justice center. And that project was led by Indigenous people themselves and will allow them to have a 360-degree approach to reducing recidivism, to helping communities heal, and to move forward. And then there are also the diversion measures contained within C-5. This is a measure that allows us to send people to the health system or other systems to get treatment. So C-5 is a really important bill, and I think that it will be a historic one. So just to follow up on some of your comments, how will C-5 facilitate the implementation of rehabilitation measures, particularly for those who are accused of drug-related crimes? Well, the basic principle or the default is that we don't want to send someone to the criminal justice system for drug problems. Drug problems are really a health problem, and so we should be directing people toward the supports that they need to be able to tackle that problem at the source. And the bill gives not just judges, but also law enforcement agencies, it gives them the flexibility not to necessarily have to send someone into the criminal justice system. Now, we're adding to the investments that we made in mental health, in healthcare, in housing, and in other areas so that we can really help provide a framework to help these people. We looked at the Gladue report for cases dealing with Indigenous individuals, and we looked at other cases for Black individuals so that we can really have all the context that we need at the time of sentencing. And we're investing in programs to help people after sentencing as well. So it's a holistic approach that will ensure that individuals, but communities as well, are better protected and better served. Thank you, Minister. Now, one question that perhaps hasn't received enough attention, and which you have been discussing in your recent announcements, is this issue of what the government is doing to fight overrepresentation of Indigenous, Black, and racialized individuals within the criminal justice system. This is a really important issue. It's something that you've been bringing up over the last few months. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? Thank you. Well, of course, C5 is part of the strategy to tackle overrepresentation of these populations in the criminal justice system. We're working with Indigenous leaders across Canada to develop a strategy on Indigenous justice. A big part of that process has actually been Indigenous-led, and we're awaiting the results of that process. And of course, there's also the overrepresentation, or rather the overrepresentation of Indigenous people is a very important issue that is going to be targeted in that strategy. By creating the Human Rights Commission of Canada, or working with them, we're also looking at other solutions to tackle this problem. We would also like to have a commission on judicial miscarriages of justice and judicial errors, because that also impacts Indigenous and racialized communities. And we're also looking at other measures and other investments, for example, in community justice centres across Canada, to have a lot of different ground-up solutions. Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Now we'll go to Monsieur Fortin for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually replacing Mr. Fortin. Oh, you've got better hair. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, Minister, this morning. You know, at the Bloc Québécois, we care a lot about public safety and security, and I want to talk about Bill C-291. It would change the definition of what a criminal organization is. Sorry, it's Bill C-279, and so the definition would be a group of 3 or more people in Canada or abroad that work toward criminal ends. And you've talked about creating a possible list of criminal entities based on the recommendation of the Public Safety Minister so that people could be listed officially, and that would help with law enforcement in identifying individuals and organizations. So for this bill, C-279, I'd like to know, will you be supporting it? With any private member's bill, we need to study the bill carefully. I'm obviously going to be doing that along with Minister Mendicino, who I believe will actually be the key person in determining our position on that matter. But I can't tell you today that we will definitely be taking a particular position on it. And I say that out of respect for the process and out of respect for my colleague. Thank you. I'd like to know, now, as Attorney General, what are your thoughts about the rise in criminality or particularly when it comes to organized crime? I know that you're from Montreal. You've seen some of the issues that we've had there. What concerns do you have about organized crime? Well, obviously, as a member of Parliament from Montreal, representing Montreal, and also as Minister of Justice and Attorney General, I'm very concerned by this. But it's a very complex issue. Obviously, we need to work with the provinces, Quebec in this case. We need to work with law enforcement, and we need to work with other countries and their law enforcement agencies. We also need to really tackle the root of the problem. It's a very complex problem. I don't think there's a single or simple solution. And I'm working with my colleagues, including with my opposition colleagues like you, in all the provinces to really try to find solutions. Thank you very much. And I like to hear you saying that you're going to tackle the problem at the root of the problem. I'm wondering, are there other examples of systems in other countries that we could take inspiration from when it comes to tackling organized crime? Yes, obviously, in principle, we should always be looking to other countries, seeing what their experiences have been. And as Minister of Justice, I do have a role to play in that. But when it comes to the fight against organized crime, that really is more the Minister of Public Safety's jurisdiction. So I would obviously support the Minister of Public Safety in his efforts to that end. Now, fighting crime in the streets, obviously that's the Minister of Public Safety. But I imagine that as Minister of Justice, you've thought about this a great deal. We've seen the rise of gun crime in our streets, the rise of organized criminal activity. And I'm sure that you share our concerns. Yes, as I just said, I do. I'm obviously working very closely with Minister Mendicino, and I will continue to do so. Thank you very much. Now, if I can move to a different subject. I'd like you to tell us a bit more about the judicial selection process. I'd like to have your personal thoughts on that, on how judges are selected. Well, we set up a system in 2016 to make the process more transparent. And I think that we succeeded in that. We're looking for both quality and diversity. You can't have just one or the other. And we struck advisory committees all across Canada, including in Western Quebec and Eastern Quebec, to ensure that there was significant representation from each region. Obviously, some judges are chosen from Quebec. Some are selected by the Minister of Justice. Some are selected in other ways. But what we did is we created a form. It's available online. In fact, we revised it earlier in 2022 after having received feedback from the people participating in the process. The question was inaudible for the interpreter. There are, yes, some of the people on the panel are legal experts and some are not. There's no particular profile that we're looking for. Really, we're looking for diversity. But there are some people that are appointed by us and there are some people who were appointed by the provinces. So there is diversity on the advisory committee, and then the advisory committee makes a recommendation, yay or nay, or they recommend looking elsewhere for options. So the candidates that we retain are studied, and then of course we speak to the justices to see what their needs are. You know, when it comes to subject matter expertise.
S'assurant la diversité et la qualité. Merci.
And we try to ensure diversity and quality. Thank you.
Villemure. Next, we'll go to, I think, Mr. Bachrach is filling in for Mr. Garrison. So over to you for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity, Minister, to ask a couple questions and follow up on our exchange in the House about 2 weeks ago concerning federal bail reform. And I'll preface my questions by saying that we absolutely support the goal of reducing the overrepresentation of Indigenous, Black, and racialized people in the criminal justice system. I think that's something that you know. I know that was part of the impetus for Bill C-75, which was passed into law in 2019, as was direction from the Supreme Court. However, what we're seeing in our communities, and I represent Northwest BC, these are our small communities. This isn't the big urban centers of Canada. The largest community is about 13,000 people. What we're seeing in terms of an uptick in crime, both property crime and violent crime, is very concerning to community leaders, to residents, to business owners. We're seeing in communities like Terrace a really troubling incident rate of a wide variety of street disorder and property crime. Businesses tell me that people are coming in off the street, taking merchandise with seemingly no consequences. And people don't feel safe in their own community. I'm sure that's something that concerns you as much as it does me. Now, when communities have gone to the provincial government and expressed their concerns, and to their credit, the provincial government has taken a number of steps. I'm sure you're familiar with these, increasing mental health resources, investing in law enforcement and such. But the province has also come back to municipalities and pointed towards federal legislation as being part of the problem. And specifically, they've pointed for the need for reforms to federal bail law. Now, I know this was a message that the Attorneys General delivered to you in Halifax during the meeting of federal, provincial, and territorial leaders. And I'm curious to what degree you agree with the province's assessment of the problem. And if so, what kinds of bail reforms might be possible?
Thank you, Mr. Bachrach, for that question. You've got big shoes to fill, and you're doing it ably. Bill C-75 was an important bill with respect to bail reform, and it was meant not only to attack overrepresentation, but also efficiencies within the criminal justice system, developed largely with the provinces at the time. A great deal of consultations with the provinces in order to reach a number of different suggested reforms and implement them. And so that implementation process is still happening. I am sensitive to the very real concerns that I've heard from you and from others, not just in British Columbia but in other places, about the challenges associated with bail reform. And certainly we are there to work. We are there to work with the provinces. A number of provinces, like BC, have taken steps to try to attack the problem as you have raised it. It's not uniquely. It's certainly not uniquely a problem with C-75. And to the extent that C-75 and the reforms or their implementation, or perhaps their non-implementation in certain cases, might be a factor, we've engaged to look at that. We have tasked our deputy ministers, federal and provincial. We did that in Halifax, in order to get some more facts out and get more detail on the problem. When that comes back, I'm always willing to work. I promised this to Minister Rankin, and extend that same promise to any provincial Attorney General or Minister of Justice, to work with them in order to find solutions. But at this stage, we're still gathering facts, understand the complexity of the problem, but I'm willing to work in good faith to try to resolve it.
So, Minister, the new Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, was quoted in the media as saying, rural changes were made with the best of intentions, but have had negative impacts on communities. I guess my question is whether you agree with him.
Well, we're studying that. We need more facts. I've had a great working relationship with then Minister Eby as Minister of Justice and as Attorney General of British Columbia, and I hope that relationship will continue now that he's taken on a new role. It is something that we need to look at more and get. These are very complex problems. They vary from place to place. We only recently implemented C-75, and I think we need to study the problem a little more carefully. But I'm certainly willing, if C-75 is part of that, is part of the problem, I'm willing to work in good faith to try to identify ways to fix it.
Minister, I think to people who have been affected by this rising crime in communities, hearing that there's a study being done, that there's a subcommittee that's been struck, probably doesn't provide them with much comfort that it's being taken seriously or that there's a sense of urgency behind that work. Could you speak to the timeline for your deputies reporting back to you, and how will the results of their work be made public to people in communities across the country?
Well, let me just say that the sense of urgency is there. The sense of urgency is there. I would caution before doing anything without a better basis in fact, and I think that's just a general rule for good policy, is to get the facts and then move from there. And I let my deputy minister, who has been tasked to speak more about the mechanics.
So we've had 4 federal, provincial, territorial meetings of what we call our CCSO, or Committee of Senior Officers. So that's the criminal law specialists across the country in every province and territory. We have started by looking at, so what does the data tell us? Where's the problem? And what we're expecting is to get a report out to deputies by the end of this calendar year, so in December. And then we'll develop some advice in the new year for ministers before they make some decisions about how to go forward. And at that point, will reports be made public.
Thank you to both of you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bacharach. I think we'll conclude our round of questions there. It's 11:40, and we'll try to get the votes in for supplementary estimates, and then we'll be doing section 291, 291 after.
No,
so, yeah, are we okay?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to go, give me a second here. So if we're okay, I will now call for vote 1B under the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Any discussions on the vote?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Here, are we done the round of questions? I understand that we're prepared to move fairly quickly on the issue of estimates. Will there be no further questions of the minister?
Yeah, sorry, that's what I was trying to say. We did one round, so I was not going to go for another round of questions just because we have about 18 minutes left for the first hour, so we can get to your bill in the second hour.
Mr. Chair, if I may suggest, we have maybe even a reduced time slot, maybe appropriate, but I do think another round may be warranted in this case.
Okay, if
we do
it's
have
the
a few
will
more
of the
minutes to go.
committee, I can go. I'll just reduce them to maybe 3 minutes, if that's okay, for the next round. Are we okay, just as not events?
Thank you. I thank my colleague and friend, Mr. Anand Sangri, for that. Minister, I know we just talked about bail. I do have Bill C-274, and for Mr. Bacharach's reference, that is a bill on bail that would target only the most serious of offenders. Minister, have you reviewed that bill?
I haven't. I'm not going to, as in my question to Mr. Villemure on the same kind of question on all private members' bills. They are reviewed in process in terms of order of where they are in the order paper, and according to the Minister of Justice has a lot of private members' bills for reasons that I think are
I take
often
your point. You have.
I won't say publicly. I won't say publicly. We have begun thinking about it, but I won't say publicly.
Thank you. You are very masterful with your words, so I'm just going to follow up with Mr. Moore's question with a yes or no. Am I to take your comments to Mr. Moore about MAID and changes, that you will not be putting the brakes on the proposed changes coming in March? Is that a yes or no?
There's in good policy, there's very rarely a yes or no answer, Mr. Caputo, as much as I appreciate the sincerity of the question. We are listening. I'm listening to you as we speak, but I'm also listening to others that Mr. Moore has referred to in his questions, other expert groups and stakeholders. I'm also listening to other colleagues in the House of Commons. So we'll work in good faith to make sure that Canadians are ready for mental disorder as a sole criterion for seeking MAID, and that is how I would frame the question at this point.
Well,
the
Minister,
answer at this point.
I can only tell you, I can speak for my constituents, and the resounding, unabated communications I've had is a no to this question, and I ask that you do take that back to your people and to your consideration.
I take that very seriously. Thank you.
Moving forward, you said that in your opening statement, we are dealing most with those suiting our justice system to most affected. Some of those who are most affected, in my view, are victims and victims of sexual offences. Now, I haven't seen anything from the Liberal government here that has addressed sexual offences. I don't know of any bill. Do you know of any bill that has addressed sexual offences here in the last few years?
Well, C-75 to a large extent, in terms of sexual assault, sexual offences in the area of conjugal violence, and even changing the balances, the pleading balances. We've also invested a great deal, Mr. Caputo, in services for victims of sexual assault and sexual violence. Investing in the kinds of organizations that help those victims on the ground. We're doing a great deal of that. We use the Victims Fund precisely to do that. I can come back to you with the actual investments that we've made. I have said them publicly before, but there has been a great deal.
My wife works in this area, so I know a little bit about it. My point is this: at this point, robbery, which is the taking of force. Is the taking of property by force, is treated more seriously from a sentencing perspective than sexual assault. One has a life imprisonment, one has 10-year maximum, one is taking sexual dignity and inviolability. Will you commit here and now to addressing that imbalance where we treat the taking of property more seriously than the sexual assault of children as well as adults? Will you commit to addressing that here today?
I'm committed to improving the criminal justice system. This is an area that has been identified. You have identified it. Others have identified it as a way to move forward. I've committed to studying your private member's bill. We have done some. We have made a great number of investments, as I've just said, in order to help victims. And Bill C-75 also was a step forward. I think you would agree in that regard. And I'll continue to work in good faith with you and with others to address these kinds of questions in our criminal justice system.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Caputo. We'll next go to Madame Briard for 4 minutes. I've done 4-minute rounds here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre.
Good morning, Minister. There's been a lot of discussion around Bill C-5. We know that the opioid crisis and the issue of overdoses is very complex. We need a diversified approach to be able to tackle the issue. And I think that Bill C-5 is part of that effort. In the supplementary estimates B 2022, there is an amount designated for new intoxication or detoxification programs in Canada that would broaden existing programs. And there's another amount earmarked for the Director of Public Prosecutions. Could you give us a little bit more detail about those new programs that are intended here? Yes, I would be pleased to. Thank you for the question. These are programs that are working really well and that provide support to people, that help victims, and that help society at large. And we're working with the provinces, including Quebec, on this one. Quebec has been a really excellent partner on this project, and we've been dealing with special programs for drug addiction that are either already existing or that are being set up. And it's the provinces that administer justice as well as health. So my mandate letter really says to support the provinces in these efforts with funding. And that's what we're doing. Of course, we support other programs and organizations to this end. And the money earmarked for the Director of Criminal Prosecutions really is intended to provide training and flexibility, because one key aim of C5 is diversion, extrajudicial measures. So we started that under C5, and we're now providing more support to keep this going. Thanks very much. Now, concerning UNDRIP, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, could you tell us a little bit more about the implementation steps, the steps of how that will be implemented, and also speak to us a little bit about how that bill could help with the implementation? Thank you for that very important question. This is an issue that takes up a lot of my time these days. We are working with Indigenous leaders, many different types of Indigenous leaders, to develop a way of implementing UNDRIP. Of course, we would like to have a draft of the plan published as early as possible, hopefully early in 2023, because the deadline is June of 2023. We're working hard to meet that. That was a deadline that was suggested by Indigenous leadership 2 years ago. We've worked hard to meet it. We're still working hard. But if we have a draft of the plan, that will really help focus our comments and the feedback that we receive. And it'll also help provide a framework for any subsequent discussions. So things are going well. We're working hard. And we know that this is a very serious issue for everyone, but particularly for Indigenous people. And we hope to have an action plan to present in June of next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Briard. Next, we'll go for two-minute rounds, beginning with Mr. Villemure for the block for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister, you got me very interested when you were talking about quality and diversity in judicial appointments. First of all, maybe you can reassure me that when you're talking about diversity, you don't simply mean, personal or community identity, that diversity would really be broader than that. Secondly, given all the changes to society, in selecting the members of the committee, did you think of, demographers, sociologists, maybe people from the social sciences, to provide a wider perspective on the changing world? So we're selecting 7 or 8 people in each case, and I honestly believe there are a lot of people across Canada who are giving a very wide range of perspectives. I think that it's working well, it's working transparently. And we've made over 560 appointments across Canada since 2016. I'm proud of the quality of the appointments and the diversity as well. And I can tell you that the Chief Justices of the Superior Courts are very satisfied with the equality and diversity of the appointments. I was at a swearing-in ceremony last Thursday for the new Chief Justice of the Superior Court of Quebec, and the positive comments that we got on that process from Quebec were very encouraging, so I'm very pleased with that. Thank you very much. So just very briefly, for the people who are doing the selection, do those people bring a diversity of perspectives, or is it just legal experts? Well, obviously, the majority are legal experts, but we do try to bring in different perspectives with other people on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Villemure. Mr. Villemure, and now we'll go to Mr. Garrison for 2 minutes. I see that he's back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here today. I know you're well aware we're in the midst of the international campaign of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. That began on the 25th of November with the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and encompasses tomorrow, which is our own National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, where we're called to remember the mass shooting at Polytechnique Montreal. So, Mr. Minister, my question is, twice the Justice Committee has unanimously recommended that the government bring forward legislation to make coercive and controlling behavior in intimate partner relationships a criminal offense. 2 years ago, I introduced a bill to do so, which would recognize that coercive and controlling behavior is a form of violence and allow victims to get assistance from the legal system at an earlier point before there's physical violence. So frankly, Mr. Minister, your government's response on this has been disappointing. So my question is very direct, and let me ask you, can we expect such legislation in this Parliament?
Thank you, Mr. Garrison, for all your work on this. I'm aware of not only your work, but the work that the two committees have done. And I have committed to you personally, I've committed to you publicly that I would work on this with you, and I will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. That concludes our rounds of questions on the supplementary estimates. We will now, give me a second here. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I might have needed more time. That's why I ended the rounds originally earlier, but it looks like we were pretty efficient. So I will go to votes on, and I'll need the clerk's assistance on this as best as he can, because I can't see you guys there. So I will now call vote 1B under the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Any discussions on this vote? Seeing none. Shall I vote 1 under the Human Rights Commission to the amount of $898,286 carry? I assume it carries. Before I go to the next one, I just want to thank Minister Lametti and all the experts who came and appeared today. Thank you for your time and appreciate your commitment to ensuring that we get all the information on supplementary budgets. Next, I now call a vote for 1B under the Courts Administration Service. Any discussions on this vote? No. Shall vote 1B under Courts Administration Service to the amount of $6,728,028 carry?
On division?
On division. Okay. I now call on vote 1B under the Department of Justice. Any discussions on this vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
I'm wondering if Gary could give us a detailed analysis and breakdown of this particular vote, or I guess, well, looking at the clock, maybe we'll just go right to the vote. Yeah.
It'll take me an hour to do that.
Okay. Shall vote 1B under the Department of Justice to the amount of $413,591 carry?
On division.
On division. Okay. I now call vote 5B under the Department of Justice. Any discussions on this vote? Nope. Shall vote 5B under the Department of Justice to the amount of $47,150,000. Carry.
On division.
On division. I now call on vote 1B under the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Any discussions on this vote? Nope. Shall vote 1B under the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to the amount of $3,419,692. Carry.
On division.
On division. I now call vote 1B under the Registrar of the Supreme Court of Canada. Any discussions on this vote? Nope. Shall vote 1B under the Registrar of the Supreme Court of Canada to the amount of $4,014,074. Carry.
On division.
On division. Shall the chair report supplementary estimates B 2022, 2023, vote 1B under the Canadian Human Rights Commission, vote 1B under Courts Administration Services, votes 1B and 5B under Department of Justice, vote 1B under the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and vote 1B under the Registrar of Supreme Court of Canada to the House.
Yes, on division.
Yes. Thank you. I guess we're done on that part, and I will now suspend for a few minutes in order to let our witnesses come to the table with our with us for our next items of business. So I will suspend and I guess let the clerk advise me once we're ready for that. Thank you. pursuant to order of to amend the criminal code and to make consequential amendments to other acts, child sexual abuse material. I'd like to welcome the sponsors of the bill, Bill Mel Arnold, a member from the North Okanagan Shuswap, and Mr. Frank Caputo, member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou. For the first hour, allow 5 minutes presentation by the sponsors, followed by questions from the members, and at least the last 30 minutes will be devoted to the clause by clause study of the bill. So I'll begin with Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes.
One, an act to amend the criminal code and make consequential amendments to other acts. At the outset, I would like to express my thank yous to the honourable member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou, Mr. Caputo, who is a full-time member on this committee and was central in the conception and drafting of this bill. The honourable member's experience as a Crown prosecutor has afforded him insight into how we, as parliamentarians, can strengthen our federal statutes to enhance protection of Canadians, especially children, and I thank him for his work on this bill. As I stated in the second reading debate, I believe it is essential that the Criminal Code of Canada contain terms that accurately describe prohibited activities. I also believe that the Code's use of the term child pornography is a misnomer in that it fails to accurately describe prohibited materials or prohibited activities. What the Criminal Code currently calls child pornography is more severe than pornography because it involves children, because it is not consensual, it is exploitative, and it is abusive, and the Criminal Code should clearly reflect these realities. Mr. Chair, the Criminal Code of Canada contains many elements, including essential elements that define, prohibit, deter, and penalize criminal activities. This bill, C-291, does not propose any amendments to definitions, prohibitions, or penalties. It clearly and succinctly proposes to change the term child pornography to child sexual abuse material. As Mr. Anand-Sangri correctly noted in the second reading debate of this bill, the intent of the bill, and I quote, is not to change the definition, rather it is to more accurately reflect the definition in the name. Courts should not change their interpretation of the law based on the change in title, end quote. At second reading, Mr. Savard Tremblay also astutely noted that by calling it child sexual abuse material, we do two things. We name the abuse that the child suffered, and we also describe the accused as a sexual abuser of children. Mr. Savard Tremblay also noted the bill puts things into perspective. This is a victim of abuse in a crime involving child pornography, and there is a person sexually abusing children. I also acknowledge that Mr. Garrison, and thank him for his comments at second reading, in which he highlighted the need for enforcement resources, especially for the specialized law enforcement units that work so hard to combat child abuse and exploitation, and improvements to services and supports for survivors. I agree with all of these points and thank those who participated in second reading debate and voted to move this bill forward quickly to today's examination here at committee. Child sexual abuse material is a growing problem in Canada, and Canadians look to us, their elected representatives, to take the steps, big and small, that are required to deal with the problems like sexual abuse and exploitation of children. I would like to acknowledge today the response and support received from the Canadian Centre for Child Sexual Protection Incorporated and Ratnac International, who've supported the movement of this bill. I'd like to thank the committee for making the time out of their busy schedule to examine the bill, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Arnold, Mr. Caputo, would you like to add anything, or do you want to go to the round of questions?
Sure, if I could have about 60 seconds, please, Mr. Chair. Is that permissible?
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. It's truly a profound honor to be here before you today. This is, as most of you know, my first time being elected for anything, my first time obviously being to Parliament, and I stood on the doorways of people in my riding, Kamloops, Thompson Caribou, and I said, one of the reasons I want to go to Parliament is to address how we, as Canadians, as parliamentarians, deal with sexual offences against children. In my former life, this is an area that I focused on professionally, and it always really bothered me that we called child pornography what it is. It is actually child sexual abuse material. Children cannot consent, period, full stop. So stop equating. We need to stop equating what happens to children with what occurs between consenting adults. And that's why pornography is a misnomer. And it is a pleasure and an honor to be here today to discuss this. And I urge Parliament and the Senate to pass this legislation on third reading and on review in the Senate expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to the first round of questions, and for some reason I cannot find my list of questions. I want to ask the order format, so I will ask my wonderful clerk to assist me in that regards and advise me who are first. Is it Mr. Moore or someone else from the Conservatives?
We have Mr. Brock, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brock, over to you, and I'll keep this, efficient. We'll try to do just one round with everyone. So over to you for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you and good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you so much for sponsoring this important bill. I listened very carefully, Mr. Arnold, to your words, and I want to thank you for giving up your opportunity to pursue your own private member's bill to support Mr. Caputo's bid to raise this important issue. So over to you, Mr. Caputo. I understand that you're a former Crown attorney. You've justified your motivation in bringing this bill to the attention that it deserves, and I applaud you for your motivation. I just want to ask you if you could perhaps provide a little more color. This will go, in my view, a small way in terms of addressing the worldwide phenomenon known as abusing children and exploiting children. Sadly, and I think you'll acknowledge this, unfortunately, this particular bill will not address the penalties for these types of individuals who have an insatiable appetite for the abuse of children. Can you perhaps provide some commentary as to how the current Liberal government's failures in terms of advancing other key pieces of legislative change, how you feel that we need to do more as a nation to set an example? And I recall your example to the minister about equating robbery offenses, where a lifetime penalty will include a lifetime period in jail versus the sexual abuse of minors and adults. So if perhaps you can shed some light on that for me, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brock, for your question. That's very true. Mr. Brock, we have to realize that children themselves who are victims of sexual abuse are often placed in a psychological prison for life. And our penalties, in my view, should reflect the fact that children are not only harmed, but they are being continually harmed. And in this type of offense, for the possession of child sexual abuse and exploitation material, they are victimized each and every time somebody downloads it, somebody watches it, somebody accesses it, or somebody distributes it. We cannot overlook this, that the abuse itself happens once, but it is perpetuated each and every time somebody accesses those things. And at this point, the mandatory minimums were struck down, passed by the Harper government, and I expressed to the minister, I was trying to express disappointment that this Liberal government hasn't acted. Right now, if you sexually assault an adult, the penalty is 10 years for taking their sexual dignity, inviolability, and consent by force. Sexual interference, that is a sexual offense against a child who is incapable of consent by law, has a maximum sentence of 14 years. Robbery, which is the taking of property by force from somebody, has the maximum sentence of life imprisonment. So we treat the taking of property more seriously than we do the taking of somebody's dignity and consent. And if you were to ask people, would you rather be the victim of a robbery or the victim of a sexual assault, I can tell you 99% of people, maybe 100, would say, I will take the robbery any day. It is time that we start addressing the issue of sexual offenses, particularly sexual offenses against children, with the seriousness that they deserve. This bill is the first step that I will undertake. I have another private member's bill on this, 299. I thank Mr. Arnold as well for running with this with such vigor, and I appreciate all that he has done with that. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Over to you, Mr. Arnold. You mentioned in your opening statement that a number of organizations supported this particular bill. Can you perhaps provide a little more color as to what particular groups were consulted and what input they had in the drafting of this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Brock, for that question. I give credit for a lot of the early drafting of this bill to Mr. Caputo through his experience on this, and we've recently, since this bill has started moving through the process, reached out further to organizations that have dealt with child sexual abuse or child trafficking, human trafficking, and the results of those inquiries are still coming in, but we did receive a response from the Canadian Centre for Child Protection Incorporated, supportive of this bill. They recognize that this is a small piece that we can do to move our laws in Canada forward. As you know, as many of us as members know, in Parliament, private members' bills can only take incremental steps, not the way that government can. And we hope that this bill will send a signal to government through the support that it's received, unanimous consent in the House, and support from stakeholders that are continuing to come in behind us in supporting this bill. And we hope that it will send a signal to government that we need to make changes to our laws to better protect Canada's most vulnerable, Canada's children.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Now to Mr. Naqvi for 5 minutes.
Let me just start by thanking and congratulating both members who are in front of us, Mr. Arnold and Mr. Caputo. Thank you for your important work and your passion you're bringing to an extremely important issue that is of concern to every single one of us from all sides of the aisle, because I protecting the vulnerable is our number one job, and children among us are perhaps the most vulnerable people in our society. And so anything that we can do and work together as we're doing so well on this particular bill will go a long way. Mr. Caputo, this is just for personal interest. I know you've been a prosecutor. How long did you practice as a prosecutor?
I was a federal prosecutor for approximately 2 years, and I prosecuted with the provincial crown, so in this area for approximately 10 years. And I also taught at Thompson Rivers University Faculty of Law on my own, and with the Honorable Judge Gregory Katurbish in advanced criminal law and sentencing for 3 or 4 years.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I know we know how long Mr. Brock has been a prosecutor. I just wanted to make sure that we have on the record your career as well. I think it's important. I don't know why everybody's laughing. My question is a serious one. This bill is purporting to make one important change, and that is to replace the term child pornography with child sexual abuse material. And so that's an important change, and I'm sure a lot of thought has gone into coming up with those 4 words, child sexual abuse material. Can you just walk us through how did you came to those 4 particular words. Did you look at jurisprudence? Have you looked at what the experts have said that those are the more appropriate words that should be in the criminal code? And my second supplementary to that would be, in your view, you are comfortable that it covers the breadth and scope of horrific material that targets children, in many instances uses children, that's available? Just want to make sure that we're not missing anything. Thank you.
I'll start and then forward on to Mr. Caputo to finish off. We've looked at the term child pornography, and it's clear to us, and from what we've heard, that it does not describe what is actually taking place, because children cannot consent to being involved in or videoed involved in making of this material. So child sexual abuse material, we feel, is an appropriate term. It better describes what is actually taking place, the actual abuse of children. So with that, Mr. Caputo may have a little more technical with his legal expertise behind him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. That's correct. In fact, Mr. Naqvi, when I was at a conference probably 3 or 4 years ago put on by BC ICE, that's the RCMP division that deals with this issue, and I commend the police officers who deal with this. And it's something that actually came up. One of the presenters was talking about it, and someone else said, you know what, we're not going to talk about it. I'm not going to call it child pornography today. I'm going to call it child sexual abuse material. I was in Germany just last week, and this came up, and they call it child sexual abuse material. In fact, they told me how inspired they were that we as Canadians will be changing this. And this was with a group, as I understood it, they were a governmental organization that dealt with victims of sexual assault, and they were going to now petition their lawmakers to make a similar change. I don't think anything can adequately address the horrific nature of abuse. Children who are subjected to this, again, will be often subjected to a life imprisonment based on what we know to be PTSD and trauma and things like that. So I don't know that there's any term that can adequately encapsulate what victims go through. Often they go through this at such a young age that they can't remember, but they know in their residual memory that there has been trauma. So I wish we could have a word or a term that was all-encompassing. To me, child sexual abuse material was appropriate because children are themselves being abused. And I will also say this, in the definition under 163.1 of the code, it's not only the material itself, it's anything that advocates for abuse of children. And that's why we came to that conclusion. I understand there may be some amendments, and we're certainly open to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Naqvi. We'll next go to Mr. Villamure for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Arnold and Mr. Caputo, for bringing forward such an important subject and for doing so with such clear passion. You know, you've talked about these unspeakable acts, these horrific acts. Your passion on this subject is clear. Mr. Caputo, I was wondering, are the cases of the numbers of this crime going up?
Actually, the number of prosecutions are actually going up. In about 2012, I believe, Monsieur Villeneuve, the Harper government instituted a law that required what we call a positive obligation to report. So that is if a service provider or a group like Facebook or Yahoo knew that this was occurring, they had to report it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who then would send it to the RCMP. So this crime, I think, was happening much more than we ever want to acknowledge. When that law changed, we saw a spike, and I don't have the statistics, but I've seen the graph, and it's just like a mountain, just straight uphill, because of how many more offenses were being found. It used to be that this type of offense was only discovered when somebody brought in their computer to a repair shop and someone stumbled upon it. Or somebody said, I know this person's doing it. Now, the vast majority of cases are coming through internet luring. You do see that, where somebody says, my child has been lured. But a lot of the cases are coming where one of the most significant cases I dealt with was luring from the Philippines. In that case, I can't remember if it was Facebook or Yahoo, was the one who's told the authorities there's suspected childhood abuse here. A child was being victimized for child sexual abuse material in exchange for money, and that's how it came. So I don't know I can't tell you whether this is occurring with more regularity. Internet luring is certainly occurring with more regularity, and that's where an electronic device is used to commit a sexual offense. Now kids are having cell phones earlier and earlier. But what I can say is we're seeing more and more and more of these cases come before the courts because people are starting to be more aware.
You know, I know we've been hearing a lot more about them. Now, you mentioned Facebook and other platforms that can now report. What are their criteria for identifying these crimes?
I'm not sure what they deal with, Monsieur. I'm not sure whether they, how their algorithms work, but my recollection is that there are varying degrees, you know, child in imminent danger, suspected abuse, things like that. And I believe, you know, I'm not overly technical in that sense, but I'm sure that they have certain keywords that they will run through their algorithms, and when they come up, then it will generate a report. That report with the suspected child sexual abuse material will then be sent. Somebody from the RCMP reviews it, and they actually, for those unaware, the people in the RCMP actually see this. Okay. And they will actually say, yes, this meets the definition in the criminal code at 163.1, and then an investigation will be generated from there. So I thank those people who put their mental health on the line as well.
Okay. Le projet de loi.
Bill C-291 talks a lot about production and distribution of this material. Now, how do we qualify what this material is? Is it Article 60.1, or is there, you know, a different definition than that?
Yeah, under 163.1, the definition isn't changing.
Okay, c'est la même définition.
Okay, so it's the same definition, yeah.
Calling it something different. Mr. Arnold, would you agree?
Yeah, that's correct. The definition isn't changing. It's just a term. The term child pornography will be changed to child sexual abuse material.
D'accord, le contenu.
Okay, so the content's the same. Mr. Caputo, earlier you said that I believe your spouse works in an area where she sees these types of cases frequently. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I have the most amazing wife in the world. First off, the most amazing spouse. She's my partner. She's incredibly supportive. She is a lawyer at a legal clinic who deals with, particularly with women who have been traumatized, who really have nobody else to turn to for legal advice and legal support. So she gives legal advice and legal support to often marginalized women, people who have nowhere else to turn, and those people have often been victims of trauma and victims of violence, particularly to groups that are overrepresented in the justice system, and I'm very proud of the work that she does in that. Thank you for the question.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. You know, as you said earlier...
Villamere, we're out of time, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Merci. Now we'll go to Mr. Garrison for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I, too, want to thank the two members for bringing attention to child sexual abuse in all its forms through a bill like this, and for doing what we'd say in the vernacular is calling a spade, saying what it really is. And I think that's important. I do not actually share the enthusiasm for denunciation through long sentences that I know conservatives do, but I think I guess I'll thank you for your support for what I think is most important here. We know what works on child sex abuse in all its forms, and that's enforcement. And quite often people do not have the resources in the organizations to pursue these investigations to their conclusions. And I will echo what Mr. Caputo said, which I said in my remarks before. We don't often pay enough attention to the mental health impacts on those who fight against child abuse in all its forms, and I want to join you in thanking those people again today. So I don't really have questions for you. I want to thank you for saying that you'll be there when it comes time to vote resources for enforcement and supports for survivors, because we know that's what works when it comes to combating the evils that are brought about by child sexual abuse in all its forms. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. I guess that concludes the round of questionings.
If I can just respond quickly, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sure. Yes, Mr.
I thank Mr. Garrison for his comments, and We hear about the abuse that takes place with the children that are involved in this, but there's also the mental trauma that the investigators go through as well, because they have to witness all of this material, sometimes multiple times as they go through it. And those enforcement personnel and court personnel that are involved in trying these cases through certainly need our recognition as well. And so support for enforcement, support for survivors. I'm sure Mr. Caputo will agree with me that those are key components as we move forward and strengthen our Canadian laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. And I actually echo that. I still recall being a young articling student when I had to review that for a defense firm I did, and it was quite traumatic. It's not an easy thing to go through those, and I can only imagine law enforcement that has to deal with this on a daily basis and go through voluminous material that is very horrific, the amount of stress and post-traumatic stress that might appear. So thank you again, once again, for your great round of questions, though it would be short. I'm going to go now in the interest of time. I'd like to provide the members of the committee with some instructions and a few comments on how the committee will proceed with the clause-by-clause considerations of Bill C-291. As the name indicates, this is an examination of all the clauses in order to which they appear in the bill. I will call each clause successively, and each clause is subject to debate and a vote. If there are amendments to the clause in question, I will recognize the member proposing it, who may explain it. The amendment will then be open for debate. When no further members wish to intervene, the amendment will be voted on. Amendments will be considered in the order in which they appear in the bill and in the package each member received from the clerk. Members should note that amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerk of the committee. The chair will go slowly to allow members to follow the proceedings properly. Amendments have been given an alphanumeric number in the top right corner to indicate which party submitted them. There's no need for a seconder to move an amendment. Once again, you'll need unanimous consent to withdraw it. During the debate and amendment, members are permitted to move sub-amendments. These amendments must be submitted in writing. They do not require the approval of the mover of the amendment. Only one sub-amendment may be considered at a time, and that sub-amendment cannot be amended. When a sub-amendment is moved to the amendment, it is voted on first. Then another sub-amendment may be moved, or the committee may consider the main amendment and vote on it. Once every clause has been voted on, the committee will vote on the short title, the title and the bill itself, and if amendments are adopted, an order to reprint the bill may be required so that the House has a proper copy for use at report stage. Finally, the committee will have to order the chair to report the bill to the House. That report contains only the text of any adopted amendments, as well as an indication of any deleted clauses. To begin clause by clause, we'll begin with clause by clause. The chair calls clause 1. And I'll be looking down at my phone, and it's not because I'm doing text messaging. I'm just checking in case my clerk or the legislative clerks have given me any messages. So there's a government 1 amendment that is proposed. Any debate?
Mr. Chair, if I may just speak to a number of amendments from 1 to government, I believe it's 12. It all essentially relates to one specific intent, which is to add the term and exploitation after the word, after the term child sexual abuse material. So it should read child sexual abuse material and child sexual abuse and exploitation material. So this will relate to Government Amendment 1 through to, I believe it'll go right till 12. So it'll be the same comment. It's just to more adequately reflect the exploitative nature of the bill, and I think it better suits the intent that's reflected here.
Thank you. Any other comments for debate?
Chair, just if maybe the departmental witnesses thank the government for the amendment, just asking the departmental witnesses if they could expand maybe on what would be maybe the rationale, or what would be captured under this definition of or this expression that wouldn't be captured under the existing one proposed in the bill.
Sure. Over to the panelists.
Thank you for the question. So the term as proposed by the private member's bill would only include child abuse materials, and as drafted, the bill would only include part of the definition under 163.1 and the offenses. So the definition currently captures two types of materials, and I'll ask my colleague to step in if I miss anything. One, it's abuse to a child. And secondly, it's any materials that are child exploitative in nature. So it doesn't have to be real, it could be fictional. So what the addition of exploitation would do would ensure that the term encapsulates both materials that are defined in the definition, that are already in the definition. So it's not a substantive change. It would be a change in the term only to reflect what is already captured in the definition. I'll ask my colleague, Ms. Perez, if she wants to add anything. I think that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If I see no further debate, I'll try to go quickly. Anyone else? I don't see any other heads. No. So we'll go shall government amendment 1 carry? Yes. Shall clause 1 carry as amended? Okay, carried. Shall government amendment 2 carry? Carried. Shall clause 2 carry as amended? Carried. Government Amendment 3 for Clause 3. Shall Government Amendment 3 carry? Okay, carried. Shall Clause 3 carry as amended? Okay, carried. Government Amendment 4. Shall Government Amendment 4 carry? Okay, carried. Shall Clause 4 as amended carry? Okay, carried. Clause 5, Government Amendment 5. Shall Government Amendment 5 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 5 as amended carry? Carried. Clause 6, Government Amendment 6. Shall Government Amendment 6 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 6 carry as amended? Carried. Clause 7, Government Amendment 7. Shall Government Amendment 7 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 7 carry as amended? Carried. Clause 8, Government Amendment 8. Shall Government Amendment 8 carry as amended? Carried. Clause 9, Government Amendment 9. Shall Government Amendment 9 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 9 carry as amended? Carried. Clause 10, Government Amendment 10. Shall Government Amendment 10 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 10 carry as amended? Carried. Government Amendment, Clause 11, Government Amendment 11. Shall Government Amendment 11 carry? Carried. Shall Clause 11 carry as amended? Carried. Clause 12, Government Amendment 12. Shall Government Amendment 12 carry? Carried. Shall clause 12 carry as amended? Carried. Now we have a new clause, 13. It's a government amendment 13. Any discussion on that clause?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
with
Mr.
respect to
Natsingari.
the addition of the new clause, it's fairly self-explanatory. It basically says that the going into force of this amendment shall be 1 year from the passage of this bill.
Thank you. Shall government amendment 13 carry? Carried. Shall government amendment 13, oh, right, sorry, I don't have to repeat that. Government amendment 14. Any discussion on that? No. Shall government amendment 14 carry? Carried. Now going to the title, government amendment 15. I think it again reflects what was amended in government amendment was 1 to 12. Shall government amendment 15 carry? Carried. Shall the title carry? I guess the title is now amended. So as amended. Am I right, Mr. Clerk? Yes. Okay, carried. Shall the bill as amended carry? Carried. Shall the chair report the bill as amended to the House? Carried. Shall the committee order a reprint of the bill as amended for the use of the House at report stage? Yes. Well, thank you and congratulations to Mr. Arnold and Mr. Caputo on a successful implementation of this bill, and that it concludes our meeting, and the witnesses are dismissed and so is the committee, so I'll consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you.